Anyway, we're going to get started. So this is a session on me. So so to tell you a bit about that. So the purpose of this session, we think like most coaches, therapists, this is probably a lot of you in the room, particularly people with NLP backgrounds, is going to have a sense of the idea of parts. So that kind of inside the structure of a person somehow has like a part of me wants this or a part of me wants that, and sometimes they may be in some kind of conflict with each other or not. And what we noticed quite a while ago is there's very little that's explicit about that in clean. So your general techniques are that you treat parts like they're other symbols, and then there's maybe a few little things you'd know to do with them, like you'd ask them what they'd like to have happen, which you're not going to do for just any old symbol. But we kind of got quite interested in this, and the fact there wasn't too much explicit in clean, probably about 18 months ago. And at the time thought it was going to be a small little exercise in modelling that might give people a little process attack that they might run. It turns out it's far more interesting in that. So it's been 18 months. I don't think we've finished yet. So we're encountering lots of fascinating, unexpected insights about this, and we've discovered that these parts or personas actually, and the way they interact, are quite different to other symbols. So we've now got a whole process we call persona modeling that's really about how you work with them. And just for added excitement, we've got some new clean questions. And there's one a bit later on. So in this session, we're going to take that topic, parts, personas as we call them, and look at an issue which is to do with that internal conflict. So the idea that there might be a part of me wants something, another part of me wants something different, and that's not resolvable. So, and it turns up in language like I'm torn, or it could be a physical thing like someone's doing this, or some sense of being in two places, quite often senses that there could be two parts, and very explicit things like, oh, part of me wants to do this, but part of me doesn't. So these are the kind of patterns that might suggest it. A little bit later on, we're going to get you to come up with an example, and most of the session will be working through that, so you get to work on your own stuff. So hopefully that'll be really valuable for you as well as the stuff we've learned. So Wendy.
Do you want to say a little bit about you more generally, Paul, other than that?
Oh, yeah, we didn't do intros, did we? I just thought we were so famous by now. So I'm Paul. Hello. My day job's actually, I come from an IT background, so my day job's working in really large programs, IT programs that have generally gone horribly wrong. And I picked up coaching and then clean when I was managing teams, because actually I felt it wasn't about telling people what to do, it was about how people could really be at their best. So I've become a massive clean advocate. I absolutely love it, put it into my work as much as I can. I've got my foot in it because sometimes things are really interesting, like this part stuff, so then I've got a little foot in the proper coaching camp as well. That's me.
And so maybe I'll do my equivalent to that, which is that I haven't just got a little foot in all this clean stuff. I'm up to my eyeballs in it, and wrote the book called Clean Language along with Judy, who's the mastermind behind this Metaforum. And I coach, I psychotherapy, I work with teams, all using kind of cleanish base, and train people to use clean skills as well, and get involved around the edges with things like market research projects and the likes that obviously can be pushed up quite a few notches if you clean up the questions that you use. So anything that involves interviewing, asking people questions, getting to their truth. If you've got clean skills, you can make it better. So I do a wide range of things, and clean is the kind of underpinning thing underneath most of it. Basically all of that comes from an interest in making things better, in as bigger way as I can manage. And this work on personas kind of fits the bill, because I think it's so foundational. It's so much underneath the covers pretty much all the time, that understanding how it all works and being able to work with it can make a big difference. But although we have some time, we don't have anywhere near enough time for all the stuff that we've managed to model over the last 18 months. Paul and I have put more effort into this than into an awful lot of other things, it has to be said. And it has been and is being fascinating. And other people are helping as well, amongst them Natalie, who's here and who's taken part in various little groups where we've asked people questions to find out what happens. So we can't do it all. We're going to do little interesting bits that we've discovered during our modeling. We're going to dip in and out so as to just help draw out some of the richness. That might mean that here or there we ask a not clean question, just so that we can kind of jump ourselves to the next little piece we're exploring. We're aiming to kind of dive in so you get an experience of it. And that means we are sacrificing kind of history and bigger context and background and so on. But obviously, you might already have spotted, it's not difficult to engage either of us in a conversation about any of this stuff at any point. So you've got plenty of other opportunities to ask us. So we're going to ask you all to reflect on some personal content, and we'll use that as the content. You don't have to share any of it. There'll be opportunities to share if you'd like to. We'll go from there with us doing the asking of questions. So over to Paul.
Yep, great. Well, we're going to get started. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to choose an issue to work on, which we're going to be working on through the rest of the session. So if you could pick something that is meaningful to you, but do remember it's going to be a very short bit of facilitation, won't be complete. It's the purposes of learning, and the facilitation is going to be us at the front that are asking questions. So it can't apply to specifically to the content. They're going to be very generic questions. So just bear that in mind when you pick a topic, but do pick something that's meaningful to you, just something you can pack away. So let's think of the issue. I'm going to say something, but I'm going to put it up on a slide as well, just so if you prefer to see it as well. But I'll say it and then try and get the slide up because of the technology. So if you could think of something where you'd like to change and you've tried to change before and you haven't been able to. So you'd like to change, you've tried to change before and you haven't been able to. And you've got a sense that there's like a part of you that wants that change and another part that doesn't. And when you've got a sense of those two parts, can you draw the two parts and label them A and B? Wendy, has that worked as a share?
Yeah, it has. It has.
Okay. So we'll give you about 5 minutes to draw, and we'll kind of look at the screens to see if people look like they're still drawing. And as you're drawing, just check in with the two parts or personas that you're drawing, that you've really got one where you've got a does want the change and another one that has a doesn't want. It's quite important that those kind of desires are there for the rest of this to work. Cool. I'm getting quite a few chats saying people are almost ready.
Great.
And one of the nice things about the video is how you get to see other people looking down at drawing paper or looking up. So I see lots of faces looking up. So I think that seems like a good point to carry on. Right. So the structure of this is throughout the session, we're going to be asking questions about these personas, A and B. So the labels are quite important because all I can or Wendy can say from the front is A or B because we don't know your stuff. And what we're going to do is ask some questions, invite you to consider the question in silence yourself, and then after a couple of questions, we'll check in with the whole group to find out what's happened. So obviously, as we ask questions, please update, draw, annotate, redraw, whatever it is you need to do to your drawings as we go, because they will develop throughout the session. And actually, when we ask the questions to the group as well, we're actually going to try and get through quite a lot of stuff today. So really appreciate people joining in and answering, and we'd also really appreciate quite short to the point answers so we can get through everything. That would be brilliant. Okay.
Paul, before you say your next little piece,
Yes.
Could we stop sharing screens now?
Yep.
Brilliant.
I knew that someone, so Nick was joined late, so I was giving him a chance to see the instructions. Excellent. Okay. So we have our drawings of the personas, but just before we explore the personas, we'd like you to notice your reactions to them. So Wendy's going to ask you 2 questions, and when she asks each one, could you just make a little note of the answer? Because we'll kind of look back on that a little bit later. So 2 questions when you ask, and just make a little note.
And how do you feel about A? And how do you feel about B?
Okay, so who has a persona where they have a strong feeling about it? Okay, just unmute and say, Kate. Because I can't, we've got so many people I can't see all the videos, by the way, so just in case you put your hand up and I don't notice. Kate.
Okay, I did. Whoops. I had excited, and the other one was sad, frightened, sick.
Okay, excited and sad, frightened and
Sick.
sick. Okay. Excellent. Was there anyone else had a strong reaction to one of the personas or both? Neville? You're mute. I can unmute you. There you
go. Yeah, one I feel proud about, and the other I feel sort of shame. Okay. That kind of thing.
So one that's proud, one that's ashamed.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Neville and Kate, for sharing that. Okay. So, return to your personas. Here are some more questions.
And is there anything else about A? And is there anything else about A? And is there anything else about B? And is there anything else about E?
Okay. So now you have some basic information about the personas. We're going to move on to something more specialized. And return to your personas. Here are some more questions.
And what could A be called? And what would A like to be called? And what could B be called? and what would B like to be called?
So please do feel free to update drawings and make little notes, write some of these names down if that's useful to you. So what happened there was Wendy asked 2 questions about each persona. What could A be called and what would A like to be called? So we've got what it could be called and like to be called. So who found a difference between what one of the personas could be called and what that persona would like to be called? So who found a difference? I think I can see a few nods, but just go off mute. And
yeah, I did find a difference.
okay, would you? So who's speaking?
Yes,
2 screens.
I did, absolutely.
Excellent. So what? Just can you give me, if you don't mind sharing, do you tell us what the difference was?
One was foolhardy, and the other was generous.
Oh, very interesting. So this is
Nick, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, Wendy.
Nick, it looked as though you were waving a hand. If you were, you muted at the moment, but we would be interested in hearing.
Yeah, part A. Can you hear me okay? I'm
Yeah,
in a
brilliant.
subway station. Yeah, okay. Yeah, part A I had down as sad. So this is part B, sad. And what it would like to be called is trying hard.
Oh, wow.
Very different
Excellent.
qualitative shift.
Completely.
Mm.
Yeah.
What about for you, Neville?
Yeah, so one stayed pretty much the same. So A had one name, and then B was the one that split. And so it's what it is called is the word thief, and then what it like to be called is, I don't know why this came up, but Nicodemus.
Oh, right.
Very good. Okay.
Fantastic.
Now, so we, as part of our explorations, we actually got kind of interested in where the name of the personas come from, and as you can see, sometimes there's this quite different, quite a difference between the name that is a could be called and the name that that persona would actually like to be called, and also the realizing that as facilitators, we often picking the names. We're often not very conscious about it.
Just put it out.
Because we'll ask, is there anything else about the competition? We pick the X that we're asking about. So we kind of choose the name, and by choosing that name and then keep repeating it, we're sort of reinforcing it. So we've kind of worked on that. We've got a few guidelines around names and a few techniques for how to use names in questions. But we noticed that, well, you've already seen, this is just a little taster, that the name can make quite a difference, and actually you as a facilitator have a role, because you choose the name, and that can have some implications. If we ask what the persona would like to be called, the persona actually doesn't like being called that name, and then that's the name you're using. That's got implications. So it's really interesting. So we're going to touch on lots of little topics like this. So it's time.
Michael, could I ask you if you'd mute yourself? Brilliant, thanks. Sorry.
Actually, Wendy, we can mute from the interface. If you right click on people. So
sorry, I'll do that.
That's okay. We can do that. Excellent.
Good point.
So that's our little foray into thinking about names. So if you can return to your personas, here are some more questions.
And how old could A be?
Oh.
And how old could B be?
Okay, so how old? So who had a persona that was different to their own age? I can see quite a few hands. Who wants to? Tony. Oh,
So one of mine was 18 and one was 50.
Oh,
I'm neither of those.
Could I offer something?
yeah.
Can I offer something?
Yes, go for it, Michael, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay. So how old could A be? So AB is a fusion of A and B.
Yes.
So that brought up the metaphor. Okay. So it crosses a line. AB for me is integration of the two personas, and that potentially could be instantaneously if I could realize it. That's my answer to that one.
Yes, thank you for that. I think we did sort of notice there was a bit of a ambiguity going on in that.
Quite helpful. Very helpful.
That's good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I saw various hands. Anyone else with personas that were different to their own age? You just like to say a little bit about Neville?
One of them was older than I currently am.
So what was that? One of them was?
One of them was older than I currently am.
Ah, how much older?
1 year.
1 year. Excellent. Is the other the same? Cool. Okay, so this is again, it's interesting for you to explore. I think Wendy, you're going to say a little bit about this because you know about David's. This comes from David Grove. This question.
yes, that's right. Sorry, I was getting distracted by the person who seems to be called Metaphorum 2, but I don't think that's her real name. Hello, hello. Would you like to tell us? I think you were waving your hands about different ages.
I was. Hi, it's Annemiek.
Hi, Annemiek.
I can't seem to shake Metaphorum 2 for some reason. I've logged off and still I am. So I'm not under specific, guys. Yes, my first part was 104 and the second one is 2. So
Oh, wow.
it was quite interesting. Yes.
Wow. Yes. And I mentioned some people were chatting as well, so thank you for that. So we've got some, David was a 9 and a 60. Portia was a, actually I'm not quite sure I can read it. I've got A is 25 to 60, B 25 to 60. Jackie's
Well, mine was the range. So I found out my A was
right.
60. And then when I asked B the question, it also said 25 to 60.
Wow.
Interesting. This is the thing, you do this and you start out and you think this is going to be a really quick question we'll just put into our facilitation. Everyone's going to have, a bog standard answer. We can predict what they'll be. No, not at all. Everyone does things very, very differently. So, I mean, that's part of the joy and part of the challenge with all this clean stuff. But it is true, this is a question that came from David Grove's early work when he did a lot of work with the child within, sort of inner child work, and looked at how in traumatic situations one can have a fragment of a person getting stuck. So you could have a part of the person remaining at an early age while the rest of the person kind of carried on growing up, so to speak. And the things we're hearing on this call with personas from very young to, distinctly old in human terms is typical of what happens, and obviously has huge implications. You talk to a 2-year-old very differently from how you talk to a 25-year-old or a 104-year-old. And you want to be able to do that as facilitator, address the different personas appropriately. So very useful to know about their ages. Okay, so I think that's really all I needed to say. Back to Paul.
Yeah, I was going to add a little bit more. I think as well with very young personas, you quite often find there's something about it can feel like it's quite a vulnerable situation.
Yeah, that's true.
Someone got stuck in a sort of a young age in something that's quite a traumatic experience. Your skills as well coach, but it's definitely potentially varying into therapy at this point, need to be pretty solid. So we've looked a lot at how to create safety, and I think clean is a really kind of safe process anyway, because it's very clear what you're bringing as a facilitator or not. But I think because of the potentials of this, we've worked on that quite a bit, and so we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So when we talk about safety, it can be to do with these very young personas. Okay, so and return to your personas. So here are some more questions.
And where is A? And whereabouts is B? And in what direction is A facing? And in what direction is B facing?
Okay, so one of the interesting things we do on the training for this is we get facilitators to draw, and this is a thing you can do if you find you've got personas, is draw little maps of the positions and the directions of personas. So I tend to do this like with a little arrow pointing the way they're facing, and just this often turns up really interesting information. So you'll find there's two personas and they're facing away from each other, or you've got a persona with one standing behind the other one. And it has implications for what they can see and how they're relating to each other. So an example, I've seen a pattern that come up quite a few times with like different clients, which is the persona will start with a voice that's behind them. Maybe it's in their ear or it's somehow behind them. And as you model it, well, the logic is the other persona is behind them, so they can't see them. So that's why it isn't a visual description. They can only hear them because they're behind, if you take it really, really literally. And that's the thing to do in clean, is take these things really literally. So sometimes the direction gives you really interesting information about what's the interaction between the personas. So having said that, did anyone have personas facing in interesting directions like that? Like away from each other, towards, behind, like that?
So I had a persona A that was looking up, and persona B, was looking down. So they were literally looking in different directions to each other. So they're not aware of each other.
Excellent. Yeah, that's interesting.
And B's behind A, and A's higher than B.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes.
If one was wanting to set up, a really close relationship between two personas, two people, two beings, that wouldn't be the first set of orientations and positions that one might think would suit the purpose. And so it straight away, starts to give you a much much better idea about what might be going on in that system and, what might be helpful. Fantastic. Anyone else who had unusual or, interesting? Snakey?
Well,
Yeah, I have. The A is in the front of me, this direction in the front, and the B is behind me, my back.
Oh, wow.
I don't see that. I don't see B, just A, and it's in maybe 2-3 meters in the front of me. And that's, I can feel this, in the front of me and behind of me. And it just popped up to my mind. Just very easy. It was very easy to identify that.
Mm.
That's the nice thing, isn't it? That it may be something that one's never considered before, but if asked the question, one can often access the information, as you say, quite easily.
Yeah.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Katerina. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. This question really surprised me because this is the question that made me feel comfortable that the two parts are actually part of a whole. And it's the first time I felt that as opposed to them pulling in a different directions.
Wow. Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, for me it was quite different. When I'm listening to people, they seem to have someone either in front of them or behind. When I asked myself the question, where is A? A was in the park having fun. And B was sitting at home in a chair. So I've come in from a slightly different angle there, I think. But that's how it was for me.
Yeah, and that's the thing with clean. However it is for you is how it is. It's just a thing as the more you can explore and get to know about how it is for you, the better chance you have of being able to move towards an outcome if you don't much like the way things are right now.
Yeah.
Or the better chance you've got of making still more of stuff that you do like the way it is right now.
Yeah,
so fantastic. That's nice to have an example of a sort of completely different location, as well as these ones where it's in relation to the individual or in relation to each other. Brilliant. Okay, anyone else who has something?
My offering is I have B running away up the hill away from A. That's their relationship. I think A may even turn and run after them to catch up, but there's something like that going on. There's definitely a connection, but B is making an exit, and B is much more mobile than A.
Right, so you can immediately start working out the implications of that, and what's likely to happen over time if you've got that information. And nice there to just pick up on the relationship aspect of their physical location and orientation. So that's
very helpful. Very helpful.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And mine were located hundreds of miles apart.
Hundreds of miles apart. Who's talking? I can't just see at the moment.
Charles.
Charles. Oh, Charles. Oh, yes. Wow, hundreds of miles apart. Excellent.
Yeah. So this is all interesting information both for you as a facilitator to sort of guide, to understand the logic and where there may be worth drawing attention, because it's maybe the problem is in some way kind of playing out because of that information, and equally it's just simply the client comes to know it.
Yeah.
I noticed Nick on chat, yes, not aware of each other, getting a massive burst of energy as I allow B to align with A in terms of direction. I think for a client, if that hadn't been a thing that was in awareness, and now it is, the change can come from the direction changing. So and equally, Morg said on chat, I had no sense of the parts having a spatial location. So of course, as a facilitator, it's worth knowing all these questions are explorations. Some people, massive insights can come, and for other people, they don't put things in space, and it's a bit, what was that about? And it just is as it is for them.
There's also things, so this is absolutely not, I'm not aiming to install anything in anyone, but just to make the point that it quite often happens. I'm sure lots of you will have discovered this with things other than personas. When you're working cleanly, that you ask a question and the person says, no, there isn't anything else, or no, I don't know that. And only minutes later, they access more information and they discover they do know whatever the answer to the previous question was. Sometimes just needs that little bit more time for the person to mull over something that's new and different to them. So that's something to always bear in mind as a facilitator as well, that, your client, you may assume that what they've said first time round is the truth, and that's it, they know nothing more. But in 5 minutes' time, things may have changed. So one always has to be on one's toes, ready to update one's model. Okay.
Yeah. Now, so far, the questions we've asked, there's sort of been a pattern. We've been asking, though we've asked about A and B, we're asking about them as if they're kind of separate, they're individuals. So this is in the context of some problem, and we assume the problem is actually to do with how the personas are in some way interacting or relating. But so far, we haven't asked about that. And this is a thing we noticed very, very early on. The first thing we did was model what we called a negotiation. So we went straight in for, or what would the two sides like to have happen, and basically started a bun fight half the time between the two personas. And as we kind of learned more and more and more about this, we realised that keeping away from that for quite a long time was a good idea, and actually just taking each persona kind of as an individual persona and just finding out more about it and just modeling it, and actually taking quite a lot of time about that reveals lots and lots and lots of information that the client didn't have, that either actually sorts out the problem if you're really lucky, or at least gives you a lot of extra material going into later stages. So one of the things we do is there's a number of what you might think of as like just dimensions of a persona. So things like the names, the location, the directions. We have some other things like age. We've asked about you might get a sense of a gender, so the gender, male or female, but not all personas have that. Relationships between them, things they know. And you can get all that staying actually away from the problem. We've actually got a little worksheet that's quite simple, where it just has like personas, rows for personas. It's a grid, so have rows for personas, have columns for things like name, location, age, etc. So you can make one up for yourself, and I think at the end, if anyone wants to give us email addresses, we can just send you through one, so you've got an example. So it's quite good for practicing. Just keeps you just with modeling the information there. Okay. Now, return to your personas. And here are some more questions.
And what would A like to have happen? And what would B like to have happen? And is there anything else that would like something?
Okay, so what happened that last question? Who got a sense of a new persona making themselves known? I think I see a couple of fingers. Was that Kate? Hey. And Shalom?
Yeah, there was a voice that came up, and I sat here for a moment in silence, thinking to myself, "Well, that's a ridiculous question." And then a little voice popped up, and I thought, "Blimey, didn't expect that one at all."
Yep. And I saw a couple of other fingers. It was Shalom. Is that you?
Yeah, interesting. A wanted to be fast and smooth with new information, and B wanted to be guided by the hand. So the something appeared in the middle, and the something would like A to take B by the hand.
Mm. Something would like to take A to take B by the hand.
Yeah, so the B is the one who has the struggle.
That's fascinating. That's really good. Thank you. And
Either similar for me, that third thing wanted them to be together in a way, or to work together.
Fantastic. What about for you, Nick? Did you wave a hand? If you did, and I think you're talking, you muted. That's better.
Yeah. One of the things I find fascinating, I thought we were kind of modeling a what is similar NLP, parts. And I tried that on these two parts of mine and haven't had a successful integration. And the one piece that seems to be missing for me was the direction. Literally having the parts looking and active in different directions. That made a massive difference. I can still feel my feet tingling.
Wow.
So quite extraordinary. I mean, I'm very aware of parts integration massively, and I've found it very useful both myself and with clients. But that particular distinction made all the difference.
It's interesting. Certainly, we both knew about the NLP parts integration kind of technique, and have found that there are times when it simply doesn't work. If you don't know the process, people don't worry about it. It's not directly relevant. But we started realizing that it doesn't always do the trick for people. And that people don't always want their parts integrated as well.
yeah, I think one of the nice things about, because obviously this is a very clean-based, all we've done is we've kind of extended clean enormously through understanding the personas, but fundamentally clean is kind of you're just going to sit with it and model it, and the client will come up with a solution of some kind, which may look a bit like what might have happened with some kind of, well, why don't you bring these together? It may not look anything like that and still be perfectly good solution for them. I think it's one of the things I kind of really love about clean. Clients are just so astonishingly creative in the end. And so we'll just draw your attention back to the question that Wendy asked at the end, which is one of our new clean questions. And what we, the two of the examples we've got, so one that there's some kind of new personas appeared, and we had like once, I think it was A and B to hold hands, and then the other one was wanted them to be together. So actually quite often a third persona appears that's quite a resource. It's actually got a desire for the problem to be resolved, and you can go back to these earlier things, what kind of persona, what's the name, what's the age, what does it know, where is it, and expand on this, and suddenly there's a third party. So now it's not so much, if you go into the negotiation bit, it's not going to be so much like that. There's now a bystander who actually can be involved with this. It completely changes the dynamics of later parts of the process if you find personas like that early on.
I also think that, like Kate's example of, she found herself saying, something like, that's a ridiculous question, in response to that third question. And that statement itself is coming from a persona, but it's often easy to not notice that that's the case. And it's certainly been my experience, in spite of the fact that we were doing an activity where I was being a client specifically to be modeled, to model out more of this persona stuff, where I had a third persona come in basically doing I'm getting bored stiff with this stalemate that we've got here between A and B. For heaven's sake, let's find some way to resolve this before, it's just too boring to pay attention to. But in spite of the fact I was even in a persona mindset, aiming to notice what I was modeling, all the rest of it, I still didn't notice that that was another persona that had come in and that had another perspective to bring to bear, and that could be a massive resource. So this is by way of a heads up that these personas are often really very subtle. And that was why we crashed around trying to find a question we could ask that could hopefully start to bring other personas that were doing stuff, but sort of in the background, more to the foreground for clients, so that they had more chance of kind of facilitating the interaction, making use of any resourceful personas that showed up. Anything else that needs saying before we move on with that one?
And I think the interesting thing, so leading on from it, because you've seen an example of a third one appearing. It's quite often more than you think. So we started with the idea that there's a negotiation model. It's like a parts thing. I'll do my video. Maybe you do one part, one hand, and they're bringing them together. That's the NLP version. So imagine our dismay after we developed a process that works quite well for two originally. When like the third one came out, and then the fourth, and then the fifth, and then the ninth, and you're going, well, I haven't really got 9 hands to put these things on to integrate. That isn't going to work. So everything we'd done for the first few months, although very useful, kind of was ditched because we kind of suddenly realised that at least for some clients, they can have a lot of personas, and this is a really rich way to go into the modelling to help them resolve it, because lots of those personas have resources, and lots of those personas can help to resolve the problem. So this is why it took us so long.
We did strive quite hard for quite a while to kind of do okay, don't invite your client to have millions of personas, keep your life kind of a bit simple. But I think we've reached the point now of kind of the more the merrier, because if one can handle the thing so that it doesn't become an almighty bun fight, then that actually pretty much inevitably adds resourcefulness to the whole party.
Excellent.
Okay.
Right.
Great.
So we'll move on and return to your personas. Here are some more questions.
And how do you feel about A now? And how do you feel about B now?
Okay, so whose feelings about the two personas have changed since earlier when we asked that? So I'll look at the top. So Tony.
I suddenly realised that I need to give a B a bit more priority now.
Give B a bit more?
Priority.
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 Uh-huh. Fantastic.
And
Steve, what about for you? I think you waved your hand. You just, yeah.
Yeah. Essentially, A is, broadly speaking, A is positive and B is negative. And I think rather than now fighting or running away from B, I want to talk to him and perhaps in some way reassure him. So that there's a difference there. There's some sort of shift.
That's grand, and it is realizations of that sort often happen with this work. That where one starts out thinking that, you know, one persona is everything that's good and wonderful, and another part is just dreadful and, you know, worth nothing. It starts to become clear as one finds out more that actually they really do all have good intentions for you, even if they're saying about it. It's all you, and all of them are doing the best they know how to do. So giving them a very good listening to and the likes turns out to be a generally jolly good plan. If you haven't seen we posted a thing about on the Facebook, an article, and Jan, I think he says his name, posted a thing that came from internal family systems background, a nice script. It's not clean, but I think it's got rather a nice playing out of this sort of thing, if anyone wanted to have a look at it. Excellent, thank you, Steve. Anyone else got different views? Sloan? How about for you?
You've done.
Sorry, I was trying to.
Sorry.
I was trying to help.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. We're just a step ahead. Sorry, I muted myself again. Yeah, really interesting. It's not a massive problem as it used to be. However, A is feeling useful now, and B is just saying, like, you just need to ask for help. And this is one of the issues I've had for a very long time. But more recently, I've been able to start asking for help. So therefore, things have changed. So the gap is not as great as it used to be. But it's really interesting that sentence came up really for me.
Yeah.
So, just need to ask for help.
Fantastic. And you already know how to do that because you've been doing that recently, from the sounds of it?
Yeah, I was listening to a motivational talk of somebody, and he said, like, oh, if you want something, just ask. It was like so simple, but yeah, it's very true. Like, I and a lot of other people probably have quite a lot of inhibitions with regard to asking for help. So yeah, life is a lot simpler this way and much better, I must tell you.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you.
Now, the interesting, so I'm going to say a couple of things about the questions we've been asking. So first thing is, so where there's been a change, the questions we've been asking are just modeling questions. They're really just find out more information about the persona, things like, you know, the age, the location. We haven't done, I haven't tried to do anything. I haven't tried to do an intervention or a negotiation or anything. Yet quite often things shift, which you're hearing in the difference between the two, just simply by finding out that information. I think that's the thing Clean's particularly good at, but it's just worth keep reminding ourselves that simple exploration and getting new understanding on the client side changes things. Then the next thing is to mention, as Wendy said at the start, there'll be a few examples where we're not using clean questions. So pretty much everything has been, except you'll notice this, how do you feel about question, which is absolutely not clean at all, but we're using it for a reason. So I want to point it out just in case anyone thinks that they should go off and use it. If you haven't been doing too much clean, that is not a clean question. The rest is. So the first thing to notice, I'll come back to the why we asked the question in a second, is that there was a you in that, and that you had a feeling about the A and had a feeling about the B. So that you is a persona, because it's not the A and it's not the B, and it has some feelings and opinions and judgments and whatever. So that there's a persona lurking there. And that's a you that's doing the judging. So this is relevant, and we wanted to do this because of the topic of safety. So if you remember back to, so right at the beginning, we asked about, so it's really reactions to personas. So we asked about feelings about some personas, and some of the examples were, you might have one where the feeling was excited, but the other feeling was frightened or sick. And another one where the feeling was proud, another one was ashamed. Now, so there's a you that's doing that judging. What happens as a coach or a therapist or facilitator if a client walks in the room who has a persona like that? So that there's a you that will do that judging and will find perhaps one of those personas something to be proud of and one of them something to be ashamed of, because it's kind of coming from you, but you have the same reaction that you reacts. So and you may not even realize, and then it may play out, you may give more attention to the one you like, or to the one you dislike, or you may be judging it, or you may be colluding with one of the personas that you kind of think is sort of right. And this is really, really subtle. You know, like I'm saying it, and of course I wouldn't, but it's really easy to just kind of like one a bit and not like another one a bit. So that's kind of getting at the essence of when we're talking about safety. We can now kind of get into that quite precisely for people. So we do exercises that would help you to get to know your signals for like safety and whether you kind of tending to like or dislike personas, so you can get to be a real kind of equal opportunities employer of all the personas. Because what we've noticed, and particularly as it gets more vulnerable as well, all the personas need to be listened to and acknowledged and respected and feel safe. And sometimes there are personas that have never been listened to. That just, if you take the logic of the client's world as real, there's this poor, there we go, this judgment, this persona, never been listened to. And the fact that someone's sitting there just saying, what would you like to have happen? How old are you? And where are you? What's going on for you? It's just something that part of the client's never experienced. So part of the safety is about this sort of deep acceptance of all personas. They're all valuable. And I think that's the greatest asset of all this. There's all the little techniques, but it's kind of almost a state of accepting that you get better and better and better at. And doing that, what you're doing is showing the client how to do that for themselves as well. So clients quite often pick up on what you're doing and realize, actually these things I didn't value have value. These things and maybe other things might have value then, that you kind of model how to be in the world. So that's kind of what we do with safety, is real kind of looking at personas and how you might react to them and judge them and learn to accept them. And I think it's a fascinating area.
You can see that if the person has had a sort of structure of, the grown-up me that wants to earn lots of money is good, and the me that wants to go outside and kick a football around and then eat lots of cream pies is bad, then the nature of the internal dialogue and everything will be disregarding, putting down, telling off the one that wants to play football and eat cream pies incessantly. And so that persona is not going to step forward happily in a situation where you're now facilitating this individual. In case you gang up, which will be its experience in the past, with the grown-up me that wants to earn the money, and give them a really good kicking. So it becomes absolutely crucial that you be non-judgmental, accepting, and curious about the heretofore disregarded or disliked persona or personas, if they're going to feel safe enough to participate in crafting a new way forward. So I'm with Paul. I think it's absolutely crucial and central to getting this kind of process to work. And it has this double level thing that it's also modeling for the client how to do it for themselves.
Mm. I think we've got what looks like quite an amazing little message on the chat from Cara. It says, this little 4-year-old A grew and took on massive proportions and put an arm round B. What appeared weak on the surface actually was strong, and I didn't know that until now. Wow, bit of a game changer. So thank you, Cara.
And this does bring up the thing that there's often a really big resource right in the middle of something that doesn't seem terribly lovely at first sight. So in a way that is an example. You wouldn't think something that seemed to be weak could have a whole lot of strength to it, but it really does work like that. So if you take the attitude that this may well be what happens with the person you're facilitating, that will help drive your curiosity and your lack of judgingness to maximize the chances that those resources come to the fore. And yeah, it does work like that. My quick story about a client who had a bunch of monsters following him, trying to take a bite out of him. That was his metaphor. As we explored it, things changed, and those monsters became a group of friends protecting him. You can see a bunch of monsters will be ready to fight or bite or something like that, and take action, and they'll be determined. They kept on following him. They were determined. And if you wanted some sort of mechanism for protecting you, then having some sort of being that was prepared to fight or take bites and that was determined, those would be really good characteristics. Again, it's something that may be wrapped up in something that doesn't seem lovely, like monsters. Actually, some of those attributes could land up playing out to be a fantastic resource for the individual. Okay, how are we doing for time?
I can't even find a word to believe how miraculous it is.
Yeah, I agree.
Everyone knows us, our ability at timekeeping is absolutely shocking. And we're actually basically on time, give or take. I don't think it's ever happened.
No, it has been frightening all the way through this session. But all of that having been said, perhaps now is exactly the right moment for us to bring things to a wrapping up point and ask you, what's one thing that you're taking from this session? So what would be lovely would be if we could zoom round, seems like saying the person's name and them doing a tiny little response, one sentence or a few words would be a good way for us to do this. So have a think for a few seconds about, what is one thing that you're taking from the session. Big assumption you are, but there we go. And then we'll do a quick zooming around. Okay, Anna, would you, and if you don't want to say anything, of course you're free, you can just say pass and we'll move on. Anna?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I have really strong acknowledgement of parts A, B and C. B being the mediator that's me in the middle, and I notice how resourceful C is. So really lovely integration of all three parts, and now we're walking forward together, which is great.
Excellent. Excellent, thank you. How about for you, Steve?
I think a lot of encouragement for me in terms of how I might work. I'm still new to clean, but very encouraging and feel a lot more optimistic about working in this way.
Brilliant, goosebumps. How about for you, Tony? Nice to see you.
Oh, once again, you've come up with something that's so simple to use but really powerful. So I can imagine using this both personally and with coaching groups and helping up people who get stuck on getting towards their goals and that kind of stuff. So very elegant. Hurrah. Thank you.
Brilliant. So there's good stuff for things like procrastination in terms of getting towards goals. David, how about for you?
David? It's me or some.
Oh, we got two Davids.
Yeah, can you see on the screens, Wendy? Because there's a whole second screen of people.
And I can't see the second screen at the moment. So,
All
David.
right, no problem. I'm here and I'm talking. So it was fascinating what I have heard and noticed in here. It's this game which I actually started to understand how much sometimes I act on two different personas or two different parts. I get into my 10 years old part, which I have discovered, where I'm very negative and upset and like carrying the memory from my childhood. And I know that I'm a very easygoing person who likes to be relaxed and free. And that's my 39 years old persona, which I would like to hold. But all of a sudden, one day or 2 days, I will be grabbed by this, 10 years old character who will act very weirdly. And then, it's like difficult to get out of it. But maybe just this conversation helps to, build awareness around how we're shaping our reality and using our thoughts and how much the memory played the game in this case. So thank you very much. It's been really eyes opener for me, and great session, guys. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
So Wendy, I just because we've got 30 odd people on the call.
We have.
Yes, so I think.
Okay, so we go back to. Oh, all right, one or two more. All right,
take one more, and then we can just finish off. And then.
Okay, all right. Who would like to report on the one thing? Ashley.
Yeah, for me, it just seems such a much more elegant way of doing the parts integration that you would do with NLP, because when I've done that, or when it's in practice groups, when it's been done on me, you keep repeating the same question, but this is some very elegant questions to actually build a picture. And my A and B was very boring at first, but then when you do the direction thing, all of a sudden it became a whole new life, and it really helped me see those two sides. So for me, it's just a very elegant way, very elegant questions to do a parts integration. So I really enjoyed it. Thanks very much for that.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So Paul, busy bringing me back to reality.
Yeah, well, that's because I said we were actually on time. So I thought,
you're
going
right.
to blow it near the finish line. We were just going to mention some of the things that we didn't have time for, because the idea was just like to touch on lots and lots of little things so you could get a sense of it all and actually have something play out with your own personas as well. So for facilitators, we only touched a little bit on about how you find other personas. So we've noticed you kind of start to learn that certain things to listen for, because personas just tend to kind of be hanging around very subtly. And if you know what you're listening and looking for, you can kind of draw them out and develop them. And some things like the question we showed you that kind of invites personas to make themselves known. I think what's nice about Clean is it's up to the client. They might not work like personas. If they do, they can come forward. We haven't done things like when personas want to kill and destroy each other, because we asked what we'd like to have happen, and sometimes say, I want to completely annihilate the other persona, I want to crush them and destroy them, and other really unpleasant things. So that can come up. There's some really interesting things we've been playing with around how to do time with multiple personas as well. So if you do things like framework for change and maturing change, where you kind of do what happens next, we've kind of got tacks and vectors for how to do that with personas. But also noticing that setting different time contexts can really help. What's a problem at one time is not a problem at another time, and that's interesting. And back to this security thing, I think a real key thing is how can you be more accepting of the personas that you encounter and the personas that you have within yourself, because that acceptance, I think, is what makes you far better facilitator, both for doing this persona modeling, but for any kind of coaching situation. So that's a flavour of other things we've got for future sessions and future times, and ask us any time about these kind of things, because we've been in it for so long and think it's absolutely fascinating.
Okay, so I'm going to quickly get through the last tiny little bit, because I think there might still be a couple of minutes to hear about people's one thing they're going to take away. What Paul said earlier about how we'd be very happy to send you our little sort of griddy thing that lets you work your way through some of the different distinctions with personas. Most of them are ones we've done today, not absolutely all. So if you are interested in that, if you would put your email in the chat, then we'll aim to send that to you. And we can also send you some information about our next training if you wanted the dates to put in your diary, 22nd and 23rd of October. If you want to get hold of us, Paul has our email addresses on the shared screen, and
yeah, I'll just pop them in chat as well.
Brilliant.
I will in a second when I can find where it's disappeared to. There we go. Yeah, so the next training in personas are 22nd and 23rd of October, and we'll send you some details along with the little worksheet if you put your address there, and we'll give you a discount voucher for having been here today. And so I think that's all that we had on our little list to cover, and it seems to me that we have definitely got a couple more minutes for anyone else who's happy to share something that they're taking away. I think it's worth doing because everyone highlights different things that will add to other people's learning as well. So as it happens, I've still got David Maudsley where I was looking originally. So David, have you gotten anything to say about what you're taking away? And you, Paul's got the knack of unmuting people, not me. Right, when did you say it again?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, good. Yeah, I said I'm on this adventure at the moment, and this odyssey, because I'm quite new to it, and it's just so exciting. I mean, this is just adds to it all, really. So my takeaway is it's brilliant. Really.
Okay. Can't argue with that. Thank you. Okay, how about you, Sneki? I don't know if I'm saying your name correctly.
Yes, you said my name correctly. So I'm very happy because I think it could be perfectly combined with the NLP interrogation parts exercise, and I like this elegant questions. I think it's perfect. And finally, for me personally, I see that my B part, which is more negative, now it's more relaxed, and it's very, very open to finally negotiate with part A. So I think for me it was perfect and useful. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. I mean, that can't be a bad outcome for having been asked, I don't know, 20 questions probably at the most. Grand. Thank you. Gay, how about for you?
Yeah, for me it was really interesting. The thing I found fascinating was when the third persona came in, because initially when Paul said about the third persona, I was like, no, that was A. And then as I went on, I realised it was obviously the third persona. I'm really interested about what you were saying. I had a persona that wanted to kind of just get rid of the other one completely. So a bit of that sort of aggressive bit going on there, not actually killing them, but I'd be more interested in that side of things, obviously, because that's what was happening for me as well. So if that's within your workbook or any of the sheets you're sending out, I'd be most grateful.
That's not going to be in the sheet that we're sending. That's part of what we go through with our bigger process.
Right.
But that is the point that many people start at, wanting to get rid of, ignore, put behind them, annihilate, whatever, one of their personas. And this is where we found that actually just sticking with developing each of the personas, finding out all about them, the others will be listening in. They'll be learning about each other, and do that really thoroughly. Starts to reduce that, if I could only just get rid of that stupid young part or whatever, and then you're in a position for them to kind of work together to work out a way forward. But that's part of the bigger process, which as we discovered, we really can't do justice to even in a full day of training, which is why the training's 2 days. So,
thank you very much.
Thank you. How about for you, Katerina? No, I think
I would completely second how surprised I was by the direction question. So this is a coach. Wow. So that is what I'm taking as a coach. Personally, oh God, I think after this, I got a completely energized feeling to actually do something about resolving this, which I don't think is possible in a normal session. So thank you very much for that.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, I think one last person who, Scott, if you have something to say?
Yes, I've done quite a bit of voice dialogue where, where the parts or personas are immediately asked to declare themselves. And even though technically in this one system they don't talk to each other, still they verbalize. And here this physical description and modeling with everything being still to start with is a new added dimension that I will definitely apply, where it's sort of, let's get the framework first, let's find out where they're standing in relationship before they start open up their mouth and start talking.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That will be very helpful. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Well, thank you to everybody. I do have to stop now. It's been brilliant to have all of you playing with us, and look forward to hearing more about your thoughts and views about it. But thank you for the meantime. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks for joining in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks all.